Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Wildlife with Ray. Today is going to be a pretty short session, I would say, and I'm coming to you here from Hilton Head. Emily and I just got back yesterday, so we're here in Hilton Head, South Carolina. So I thought I'd go back to some photos from Hilton Head. I shot these back in, let's take a look. When did I shoot these? Back in January of 2022. And a little bit of something a little bit different on this one. And I tried to really get unique. And we didn't have a lot of birds on this particular morning either, but we had a stunning morning. So this is what it looked like. I went out on this particular day with the Z9 and the 400-2.8. The lens looks a little bit weird here. I think it's like, it looks a little long because I shot it with the really wide lens on the phone. But anyway, this is the habitat. I'll have a few more behind the scenes photos to show you. This is a private marsh, so it's private property, but we have permission to access that. Emily and her family used to live there, have since moved, but have connections to get back into this private property, and it's a very unique space. I will say that for sure. I've been in a lot of marshes all over, up and down the East Coast, from Florida to New Jersey and a few places in between, and I've stumbled upon similar types of habitat, but I've never stumbled upon this type of habitat that's accessible in the way that you can walk out into it and get into the marsh and in the water, and that has the birds, like the variety of birds, number one, but also the friendliness of the birds. And I have no explanation as to why these birds are as friendly as they are, because nobody else goes out in this marsh. And sure, there's houses around it and stuff, and so the birds do encounter people, but not out in that space. And yet they're like weirdly friendly there. And I just got no explanation for it. So anyway, let's dive into some of these photos here and take a look. So it started out that morning with a killdeer. Didn't stay that long, so I just got one shot. And let me bring the settings up here so you guys can see. Nothing too great. Oh, actually, wow. This was with the 500 f4. This was before I had the 400-2.8. That's why that lens looked a little bit longer. Okay, I didn't realize that. I just saw the big prime lens and thought that's what it was. But yeah, this was I think this is Z9. Gosh, is it? Yeah, it is Z9, but it was before I got the 400-2.8. Gotcha. All right, so good to know. We did have a little blue come in here, and this is the kind of stuff. This is before the light really started hitting. So there is a tree line pretty close, as you saw in that first photo, right? We got this tree line here, so it does delay the sun from coming up for a little bit in this particular pool. There's another pool that we can access that has the sun hits it a little bit earlier, but you never get that first light out of it, but it's still, it's still amazing. But what's really cool about this is you can get these true mirror reflections. So this is, not manipulated other than just basic contrast and color and stuff like that. And you can get these basically true mirror reflections out of this particular location because the water is so shallow. And so even with real light breezes, you get no ripples on the surface of the water. It takes like a decent bit of breeze to start kind of messing with it. So just doing some basic stuff here, nothing too crazy with the shots. I think here we are out in the marsh that morning. So I think we had those couple of birds and then they left. You can see the sun just barely starting to peak up there. And then here's where the sun started actually shining. And I do remember now it was a really cold morning too. And you'll see in a little bit how we can show that, but this is Emily doing some shooting. It looks like she was maybe doing 70 to 200 millimeter that morning is my guess. But check this out. Isn't that wild? You just stand in this space. And in fact, I have a video here to show you guys of her just kind of walking through this space. So you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like there. Isn't that wild? You just kind of are walking on this mirror basically. And there's a little bit of ripple in the foreground from me moving there, but I'll play that one more time. But you can see that shallow water, and when it's calm out, it's just like glass. Like the only reflections here are coming from us moving out there, which is pretty fascinating. So there's that. I wanted to show you guys just to kind of give you an idea what it looks like. And then the sun popped out, and I noticed her breath as she was walking along. So I took some photos of that, and then actually asked her to exhale a deep breath while she was pretending to shoot something just to get a photo like this. I thought it was kind of a unique thing, but the backlight was on point. The lighting was incredible, and yeah, it was really neat to see there. So little blue, got to mess with a little bit more, and then this guy dropped in. So this was a second pool that we had gone to. in a different spot, and this guy just dropped in right in front of us. And there's a little bit of mud down here, so you can see why I composed that out. I would have loved to have shown that entire reflection, but I wasn't forward enough. And this is one of those things that, you know, if you can move around and get yourself right up to the edge of the water, like if I was able to creep up, and I don't know if I did, it looks like I wasn't able to. I think he just started moving around and hunting. If I was able to creep up to that edge or start at that edge of the mud, then I would have been able to get the full reflection in there. Probably could have stayed horizontal or maybe went vertical, either way. But lighting is working great here. Plenty of light, so the settings were easy there. And then I guess there was a little blue as well. Got this guy, went much darker with this one. So that's the beauty of this backlight stuff. And the dynamic range of these cameras is you can do a few different things with them. You know, you can show something where you can see pretty good detail on this side of the subject, and then you can go and do something a little bit more like rim lit. And I did that because of that feather on its bill. I think it was doing some preening or something like that. Tricolored looks like he's ruffling out, getting ready to go. Yeah, just doing some shaking there. And then see, great example here, playing around with different exposures. I was going vertical here, I think to show the height of these, like the entirety of these grasses back there. And so I didn't want to clip them. As you can see, that happens when I go horizontal there, just to fit the bird in. There's not much space down here, and it kind of cuts those grasses. But then again, this tricolored was doing some preening, and I thought it was a little bit more interesting with the dark version there. And, you know, the other thing is you can process these any way you want, you know? So if I bring this up here and develop, you know, I shot this, what did I shoot it at? Let's see, 100 ISO, all right? So I did lift the shadows there, but watch, I could drop these shadows and then just lift the whole exposure and get a fine image with a good exposure there, you know? Even though straight out of camera, this thing was dark. In fact, that's too underexposed for sure, you know? I definitely went too dark there with that one, but the beauty of it is you can get to there and it's fine. I mean, there'll probably be a little bit of noise in here. Yeah, real fine grain that I could just easily remove. But that was more of the edit that I wanted on this particular image anyway. So totally worked. Getting the shake out there was really fun. So that was cool. Yeah, so there's the raw file edited, and then the final Photoshop file just ended up cleaning up that one little bit there, and then really popping the highlights to get those to show. But a fun image, right? And this is one of those I probably started too dark as well. You know, I'm guessing I was shooting, let's see, yeah, manual with that, I figured at that point. Then after the preening session, he just took off and flew. So shot a little bit more with this little blue, and then this tricolored worked out into these grasses. And this is where things started getting fun. So I have the luxury of having shot here. This was, I don't know how many times, you know, this was probably time 15 or something out there, right? I've been out there in that marsh a lot. And so I've photographed the same species in that similar habitat, sometimes in similar lighting as well in the past. And so when given the opportunity to get a really friendly bird, and this guy was really friendly, I was able to kind of walk in really close to him and start shooting, and it was time to play around. And so that's what you're going to see in the rest of these photos here, is that, and I think if I recall, I know this was a while ago, but if I recall, what happened was I think I missed focus with one of the shots. It like caught the grass in the front, and I noticed the out of focus bird in the background and thought it visually looked really pretty to me. And so I ended up leaning into that. So I shot some in focus, really shooting through these foreground grasses on purpose. I positioned myself with all of this stuff in front of me just to get some interesting textures and color and stuff like that, but more the textures really. The light was getting a little bit stronger too, and so I felt like if I just shot out in the open, like some of these spots that were getting hit with sun in the background were going to be a little too intense and harsh. And I really just like to mix it up, you know, that's a big part of it. So still in focus there and still in focus here, and I'm shooting through a lot of stuff. And I remember this was right after I got that Z9, maybe only having it for like less than a month. And I remember being fascinated with how it was eye tracking through all that grass and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. And that was well before any of these firmware updates and stuff like that. So playing around with a bunch of different compositions. As you can see, I generally kept the bird higher in the frame so I could include more of the lower foreground stuff like that texture, because above it the grasses started to fade and then just kind of a flat, clean, non-distracting background, but just less visually interesting to me. And then this is when it happened. I started seeing that out of focus texture and shape of the bird. And so I don't know if this is what I can't remember because it was, going back 2 years. I can't remember if I was specifically focusing on some of these other grasses or just trying to keep it out of focus in general, So there's a final edit on that one. Back in focus again. And this kind of became part of the problem. Once that sun gets up high enough, if the water is rippled or if it's not completely water covered, and so sometimes there's a little bit of that wet mud showing, it shines just white. And when there's direct sun on it with no cloud cover or anything like that, those areas just go nuclear real fast. And so my goal was to start hiding that. So finding thicker grasses in the foreground and then waiting for the bird. And I do remember this, he was actively hunting and just moving through. So completely ignoring me, stalking slowly. So I was able to stay with him and not have to, chase or anything like that. Just kind of move slow to line up and wait for it to find these openings and kind of walk through them and stuff like that. And as soon as I would see it through the viewfinder, I would shoot away. And this was all, at this point it was handheld with that old heavy giant lens. So this is the tricolored still. Almost looks like a little blue from that angle, but I mean the light with what it was doing in the eye was really, really cool there. Here he is. Yeah, look at that. I mean, he did come in really, really close at some point. So at that point I was like, the light is beautiful here. If I recall just from looking at this too, there was a little bit of thin clouds kind of coming through here and there. And so it provided some softness to the light because you can definitely tell this isn't quite that intense on that highlight side. And so that side lighting worked out really nicely. And I love what it does with the eye, the light shooting right through it. You can see that little glow on that side. And yeah, it's pretty crazy cool what it does. So got a darker background as well, maybe when the light got a little bit stronger. Then he came in offset with these nice little grasses there, just kind of resting a little bit more. They're stunning, stunning birds with that long bill. There's the final edit on that. And so, yeah, I just played around with a couple of different things there. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I do go back to some more out of focus stuff. Having fun with this, just dipping down those grasses again, playing with some foreground stuff there. They were getting a little bit more side to back light there. It's coming in more strong left at that point and still lighting up that eye, which is really nice. But these grass textures, to me, they make such a big difference, Like there's nothing wrong with that clean shot. I mean, that's really pretty, actually. I love that, and it does have some texture in the background, but this kind of thing, to me, like, I don't know if I love this piece coming in front here, or like some of that, a little bit cleaner around the head would be nice, but all down here I don't mind. And then the texture that it creates over there is just so unique, I think. There's another clean close shot. Yeah, gosh, the light was incredible that morning. Really soft backlight on this one. We'll give this one a second to load. There you go. And the feathers on these guys are just so stunning. So not a lot of compositional play here other than just give them some space in front, try to, make some kind of decent shape out of the frame. That's definitely a challenge when they come in really close like that. And then I dipped in and started really playing with some foreground stuff. So you're going to see there's the final edit on this one. So straight out of camera on this, if I reset this raw file, I'm guessing this thing is going to be really weak, Yeah. So the foreground that I was shooting through a lot of foreground grasses there. It was being lit, those grasses, so they're brighter. So a little bit of a wash over it. Probably a little bit of lens flare at the same time as well coming in there. So there's a few things sort of contributing to the sort of overall washed out look of this. That being said, I could see a version of just leaving it this way, leaving it kind of lighter, more washed out. But personal preference, I tend to enjoy the more rich vividness and colors and contrast. So I leaned in that way. But man, this one, it really comes out almost looking like a painting. And listen, it's not tack sharp, I think it caught focus back here. So I guess there is a part that's tack sharp. The eye is missed, but with a shot like this, in my mind, who cares? It does not matter. Like this to me, And let's see, I don't know if I have, yeah, I think that was one of the favorites there. But if I were to compare these two, like this one has that sort of sense of, it's a beautiful portrait of that bird. You know, it really shows off the beautiful details of it. But this one right here, to me, elicits so much more feeling and emotion and almost sort of, and here's the challenge, right? I don't know if it's because I was the one that was there and took it, that it transports me back to laying in that marsh and seeing it kind of, you know, hazy through those grasses and stuff like that, or if it does that for the viewer as well. So if you're watching this, let me know, like, does one of these transport you to being in a place like that a little bit more? And I think it can only do that if you're a photographer who has shot something similar. And I don't mean the similar bird, but similar scenario. And to me, when I see a photo like this, whether it be for myself or someone else, what happens is I get transported to, like, yeah, I can imagine laying in those grasses and just barely seeing the bird through there. And then you're struggling to focus and just being in that space. Whereas this one, for whatever reason, I don't really know what it is. This one doesn't do that for me. This one is sort of just so, I think it's just so accurate and clear and in your face. It doesn't really force me to think or transport me in that way. I mean, it brings me back to that day because I took this photo, right? But if I try to imagine being a viewer that didn't take this photo, it doesn't do that. And again, I love this photo. I really do. I think it's beautiful. I love the texture of these grasses that I left over there. I think the light is beautiful. The bird is beautiful. And it shows it off well. And I do like that we get to really see like the intricate feather detail, those long neck plumes on these birds. But again, like, I don't know, there's just something more emotional and more feeling I get from a photo like this on the right, or even like one of these, you know, like that. This is another great example. If I bring that up side by side there, you know, it's just as close. In fact, it's closer, but there's something more, and I don't want to use the word artistic or creative because I feel like, I don't know, that just has certain connotations with it, but I just get more feeling from looking at this photo on the right than I do from just seeing that more standard, clean portrait on the left. And so I'd love to know if you get that feeling as well. And I'm sure not everybody would. There's probably some of you that can or do appreciate something like this on the right. And then there's others that are probably like, it just doesn't do it for me, which is totally fine. But I guess I'm just curious if it's more that I'm feeling that because I'm the one that took it and it transports me to that time and place when I took it, or if it does kind of get that feeling and emotion through just being the viewer that didn't even take the photo, you know? So anyway, here's another example of playing with some really fun foreground and dramatic light there. That backlight stuff is so much fun. I loved shooting through the textures, and there's another out of focus one, you know. This one, I feel like the head of the bird doesn't show that well. It's not, that shape isn't quite as dominant, so it gets a little bit lost in there, but conceptually I like the concept. And another one just playing with some lens flare here, just letting that wash kind of fall over the lens. And then, you know, when I didn't get the opportunity and it wasn't working out and the bird moved and there's just straight light on it, sometimes I'm not opposed to that, you know, so I'll still take those photos. And I think a shot like this looks beautiful. I love the colors in the grass and the foreground and stuff like that. And then here's an example. I took this on my phone just to show kind of what the habitat looked like around there, where this bird was, and how friendly it was. You know, it was just kind of walking through that space there. So a few more backlit shots to kind of wrap things up. I got so close, I just started shooting details of the bird, trying to figure something out there, seeing if there was anything to be had with that. Just going with a clean background there. Shot this, so like I think he was resting right about here, if I'm not mistaken. And then I moved over and lined up to just see just this reflection down there. But the sun was just so bright, I couldn't properly expose for it at all. I don't know that I closed down. Yeah, see, I didn't. I maxed out my shutter speed and lowered the ISO as low as it would go, but I never closed down the aperture. And so I wonder what would happen if I were to do that, if I were to, you know, close down that aperture and try and get a little bit more something. I'd never get an exposure in the sun, but it's just something a little bit more exposed or round in it instead of that huge giant blob. I think this shot could be interesting, if not for that giant blob. It really kind of ruined it. So Anyway, that's that set right there, guys. I'll bring up, these are some of my favorites again, some of the ones I edited out of that, so I'll show you just those. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Like I said, it was a little bit of a shorter one. I still managed to go for 20 minutes talking about this stuff, huh? But really having fun trying to do this, and I have to say, I'm excited that we're back in Hilton Head. We went out to the beach last night and had a fun time, and we're hoping to get back into this marsh again soon, and maybe even some different marshes around here and try some different stuff, or even just hang out with these birds and get similar shots again. So excited to be back here, and hopefully we'll get something really cool in the next month and have something to share with that. All right, thanks for watching, everybody.